Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello there, everybody. How you doing? Okay, so talking a little bit about $50 Million Bullet, Eagle Nation, Michael Funk today here. So there's a new article out today, and it's basically talking about the new docudrama coming out, the $50 Million Bullet, and it's kind of talking about things, and they talked to the police chief there in Neenah now, the current police chief. He wasn't the police chief at the time, but he's the current police chief. And it's just, to me, interesting because, well, number one, it's obviously we know that they've been dishonest in ways. I mean, we know that in the 2012 raid, they raided, but they didn't find anything until sometime later. You know, when they'd come up empty, they later find a little tiny piece of marijuana in an office after 20 seconds of video goes missing. I mean, so you got all these very odd things. And guess who confiscated the video after the raid? Neenah Police Department. And then suddenly 20 seconds is just mysteriously poof, missing. And then some marijuana gets found. So, yeah. It's just bizarre things through this case. We know that Hoffer was face-to-face with Michael Funk 3 months prior to being shot by Hoffer. We know that they were face-to-face. You know? And there was significant kind of amount of contact between Funk and the Neenah, you know, the Eagle Nation Cycles, I should say, and even Hoffer particularly. I mean, there's just so much. Hoffer's name just keeps popping up around ENC. It's just bizarre. But that's not proof of anything. But what is odd is that eventually Hoffer is the one to shoot him. Okay? And I just want to point out one thing that Chief Olson says here. And that is that the paper points out that David Starr is saying that Neenah Police Department has misrepresented things themselves, which is exactly what the police chief is accusing David Starr of. Which means this movie is going to help us get at the truth of things. It's going to help us clear up what's what, really, because that's what David Starr wants to do, is tell the truth and to convey what actually happened, to just play the series of events out as a docudrama with just letting the events play out as they were, you know. And so people will be able to see that and look at it and see the way things were handled and judge for themselves whether they felt like Neenah PD and, you know, Neenah, the city of Neenah, were dealing on the up and up, because it doesn't really seem that way. People that are dealing truthfully and you know, fairly, they're not trying to play games. They're not trying to misrepresent things. Okay, and my example is this. Okay, after Michael Funk was shot, we had multiple, you know, officers that were getting in the press and saying that Michael Funk had been warned to drop the weapon, or to, you know, or that he had been warned in any way, shape, or form at all. And that was not true. But there was at least 2 or 3 that came out in the media telling the public that Michael Funk had been warned. And what Mr. Olson points out in this article is he's saying, okay, yeah, we were wrong about that. It wasn't lies. We were just wrong. It's like, you're kidding. You didn't watch? Nobody watched this video to see what happened? They all just start going on the news and just claiming something they have no idea if it's true? Why would they do that, Olson? Why would they do that? Because they were covering their ass. That's why. That was the only thought in their mind. Do you understand what that does to the credibility of Neenah PD? So yeah, you want to make this fine distinction about, oh, it was just a mistake. Well, I think it's a grievous mistake. And I think all you're doing is saying, Yeah, we made a mistake, but we eventually took it back. Oh, so you eventually walked it back, right? You eventually walked it back when you realized that the video was out there and people were going to be able to call you liars, right? So then you walked it back. That's all that says to me. It just tells me that you're claiming that David Starr is going to tell a bunch of lies. But I guarantee if you were making a film, I'm sure you'd be telling a bunch of lies yourself. Because even if it was a mistake that multiple officers got into the press and claimed that Michael Funk had been warned in any way, without looking at the footage, without knowing what actually happened, that's an issue in and of itself. Why are people doing that? Why are officers getting in the media and saying anything at all? Right? So, yeah, you want to make a fine distinction about it was just a mistake. It was just an accident. And we corrected it. No, you maybe did, but only after you colored public opinion. All the people locally kind of pretty much thought, oh, okay, he was warned and moved on. And then later, sometime later, at some point, at a later date, you then walked it back. I'm unimpressed. Okay? I'm thoroughly unimpressed with your walking it back. So, and that's not my only problem. Okay? My other problem with this whole thing is that why, in this situation, does it seem like Neenah PD and the city of Neenah are casting themselves in the role of the victims? What's up with that? What the hell is up with that? Okay? Why? Okay, were the hostages in this situation treated like hostages? Were they cuffed, thrown into cop cars? Were they offered any kind of grief counseling? Was anything that would normally be offered to victims, especially ones who have a loved one accidentally shot by the police department? Isn't there some kind of isn't there some responsibility to those victims? I mean, I know Wisconsin has a victim rights crime board, and the hostages in this situation were the true victims. But all I see is Neenah PD and Neenah acting like they're the victims here. And that just bothers me. So, and like I said, no, the people, the hostages from this situation are still raw. To this day, they've never received any kind of help or any kind of grief counseling. It was never offered. Nothing. Zero, nothing. And they were treated like common criminals. Really. They were detained, held, even cuffed, some of them, and detained afterward, not treated like victims of a crime, but were being treated like suspects. And that's the way Neenah PD is going to look in this. And that's what I think that Chief Olson is really afraid of. He's afraid of the fact that people are going to see the real kind of crap style that went down in this situation, and that they might have opinions about that. Whether or not it's going to result in Hoffer being, reprimanded or anything, it's probably not. None of that's going to happen. But I guarantee you, people are going to now form an opinion moving forward when they think about hostage situations in Neenah and in Wisconsin. Because this one is disturbing. Why was he not warned to begin with? Number one, because Hoffer had him dead to rights while Michael Funk's back was still to him. Okay? Hoffer had the drop. He had every advantage. Every advantage. Plus, not only did he have his own gun trained on Michael Funk, he had the officer, Ross, standing next to him with his gun trained. You had two guns trained on one man. And you couldn't even offer one short warning, not one short utterance to see whether or not he dropped it or turned on you. You got 2 guns trained on the guy. He's probably not getting the drop on you, especially at his age. So, yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with this, you know. The docudrama is going to play it out. It's going to take the situation going off of the tapes, and it's going to play it out exactly kind of how it happened and let people look at it and see it for what it is and make their own assessment. And you know what? It's like I said, I think this is going to be more embarrassing in the fact that Nina's going to be found out that they didn't treat the victims of this crime like victims of a crime. Things like that are going to come out that are going to be embarrassing. And I think that's what Chief Olson's really afraid of. So, all right. That's about it for this one, folks. I'll leave the link to the article I was just talking about down below. This guy, Mr. Olson, by the way, Mr. Olson, like Mr. Benke over at the Post-Crescent, keep referring to my interview with David Starr, but they won't tell people how to find my channel. I find that interesting. They've referenced it now 4 times. Chief Olson has referenced it twice in an article, and the Post-Crescent reporter David Benke has now referenced it twice in articles. None of those 4 instances do they mention my channel. They do not want people there finding my channel. Wonder why that is. All right. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.